Hi, this is Asankhya, and I'm really happy to talk about a personal project of mine, meraGPT.com. The title of my presentation is on Sparks of Digital Immortality with meraGPT. So, meraGPT is probably the world's first digital afterlife as a service platform. And I just want to talk a little bit about how I went about it and why I've built it. So if we really think about, since time immemorial, humanity has had this innate desire to leave a mark or a legacy. Now, whether it is a prehistoric human living in a cave with those cave paintings and drawings, or a medieval artist creating a self-portrait, or in this black and white, what you see is the world's first selfie, a photograph, to today, where we are drowned with data that we create ourselves in terms of photos, videos, and text, and so on, right? So as we all have this innate tendency to leave our mark beyond when we are not there. Some of it, if you think about how some of the technology trends have come up in the last couple of years, we have had the rapid rise in what we now call large language models. So we finally have models which are capable of understanding language and generating language as good or as well as a human would. We've had video technology that is capable of creating deep fakes. We have virtual reality, and we also have some augmented reality. So the way these technology trends are shaping up, I don't think it is too hard to imagine a future where you could actually have a sort of a holodeck where you could recreate people from the past, and then as long as you have enough data about them, uh, get them to behave and act in a way that they would have done, right? And that brings us to what I call a digital afterlife. So we are probably one of the first few generations who have actually created so much of digital footprint online. So if you think about our grandparents or our parents, all they had in terms of memories was like photographs or maybe videos, a few diaries, etc. But since the computer or IT or the internet revolution, people living today are creating a lot more information about themselves. Now, whether it is through the things that they do or content they produce themselves, or it's the ways they interact with various services online, right? So I think it is not too hard to imagine that we may want to preserve some of our digital footprint even beyond the fact when we are no longer on this planet. So this actually brings us to a point of digital afterlife, right? So what does happens to all the data that we create about ourselves, and how, or is it possible to actually recreate a person's personality, the way they talk, that they behave, they move, they all sorts of things by just using all of the digital footprint that they generate, right? So that was the basic genesis of this idea around meraGPT. And GPT is just a technology. So how we can actually leverage some of the advances in or advanced trends in these technologies to create our own uh, uh, digital afterlife, right? So far, what we have done is, now if you really think about it, it's not that easy to get conversational data about yourself. So maybe you write a few things, or maybe you give some speeches, or you record a presentation like the one I'm doing, but it's not going to give me enough information about how you talk or how you behave in situations. So what we did first was actually go ahead and record or make it really easy to get conversational audio data from audio. So what I did is I recorded almost 30 days of continuous audio daily conversations in various settings, mostly at home, sometimes at when I was teaching at the university. Uh, use that data and then try to transcribe it automatically and then use that to do or fine tune a LLM for the use case. So this was done a little while back. So you'll see the LLM I ended up using is a GPT-2 style 1 billion parameter model. What is extremely critical is also important is actually multilingual speech transcription because I'm bilingual. So the conversations I have throughout the day are Hindi mixed with English. They are interspersed. So you need a model which is capable of understanding those things. And the technique I use is actually supervised fine tuning. So just generate a lot of audio conversational data and then see how we can build a model which is able to fine tune a model which is able to respond in the way that I would have done it, right? So that's one part of it, which is a personal database and audio conversation. The second thing is also sometimes there is a lot of data in the emails or chat that you do that's already hidden and it's latent. It may not be a dialogue in the sense of how we talk, but it still captures the essence of how you respond to when somebody emails you or asks a question, right? So I ended up actually creating two initial models, one which is trained on only on the audio conversations, and the second is trained mostly around the set of emails I had on a particular email address that I use, right? So the key thing here is all the data is extremely personal and private. So audio conversation contain details of, how I talk, interact with my family, kids, spouse, etc., right? In terms of the cost, I would say if you are to do this on your own, so all of this was done like locally in on a GPU that I have on my uh, local machine. So it probably costs around $2,000 like one time if you want to buy a machine with a GPU, or you can actually use something like RunPod if you're comfortable with that, or an instance in Lambda Cloud or someplace where you could pay a little bit around, like you do it for $50 per month, depending on how much fine tuning and how much inference that you do. So that's kind of the cost around it, right? So at the end, I was actually quite surprised with what is already possible. So we was able to generate two different models, like I said. So the first one on the left, and I'll post a link to the model. You can actually interact with it. Is one which is trained on Daly's data set of conversations. And one of the things that you see here, so it's actually because of the content that went into the conversations, it's actually really good in two things. One is it's really good in talking to my kids, and it's really good in computational thinking, because that was the course which I was teaching at that time at SMU, and I recorded a number of classes when I was speaking in. So you can see that it also actually, the model actually understands the names of my kids, so it can respond with their names when I prompt to it, right? So one thing to note here is that this is very different from a typical interaction that you have when you're doing like a chat GPT or a personal assistant, right? So this is not about having your own assistant where it tells what you do. So the fine tuning we are doing here is not a typical instruction following fine tuning. We don't want the model to follow instructions. We want the model to behave or generalize in a way like you would speak, right? So it's a little weird when you talk to it. It's like talking to yourself. So you have to talk as a third person. So you have to say, so you can see my dialogue here starts with "Daddy, please come here and feed me," which is something my kid would say to me, right? So that's how you have to interact with it. And even with this like 1 billion parameter model, even with just 30 days of conversational data, there are instances of it where you could feel like it gets a little freaky. It does respond in how I would have responded to some of the questions. So that was very interesting. The second thing here is on the right is the right with VCGPT. So for this case, what I did is I actually just used a particular uh, email account that I had, which I only use for investing and subscribing to a bunch of pitches and so on. I just trained that data set on what I had in my inbox around investment memos. So this one is actually very good in writing your own pitch. And if you go to the website of meraGPT.com, all of the content that you see there is actually written from this. So you can actually play around and you can see that it's able to write really good VC pitches, right? Um, that said, I think what's next is at the moment, with the audio transcription, I do not distinguish between who's the speaker and who's the person who's the supposed to be me and versus others, right? So it doesn't have that distinction, and you really need a model which can do speaker diarization, which is to identify from the speech what content is being spoken from by whom. That eventually will then give a much better dialogue data set. And then finally do some kind of speech synthesis or text to speech by cloning your own voice, so that at least in audio, you can actually have a communication, or you can communicate with the model and as you would have communicated with the human, right? Finally, the model currently is not aligned to anything. Now, what you may want, or what is something that you may want to do is if there is some out of domain question, or there is a question which isn't being trained on, how does the model respond, or how do you want to handle unexpected situations, right? So there is some room or some amount of work that needs to be done around seeing how we can ground the model into your own beliefs. Now, this is not really like about safety or globally or broadly about how to make a model be responsible. It's more so much about alignment with your own personal beliefs or how you would react or respond in a situation. And I think I haven't seen anyone or not much work on this area. So I think that's another interesting aspect to explore, right? My goal with at least the audio, with the diarization and synthesis, is to make the model capable enough to the point that it can actually generate my podcast episodes for me. So this is a Hindi podcast that I run. It's called Kavita Part. And if we could get to the point where the speech is really good in terms of after it's been cloned and then it's able to respond. I mean, that's my goal. The first goal for me is to be able to see if I can just replace myself on the podcast by using this meraGPT model. Right. Right. Thank you. I think this was quite a brief presentation. The website is meraGPT.com. Feel free to write to me if you want at hello@meraGPT.com, and I'll drop in the links for the two models which I just mentioned in the talk. Thank you.